All right. Good morning, Waymart Church. For those of you that do not know me, my name is Casey. I'm one of the pastors here at the Waymart Church and the Carbondale Church. One church, two locations. Pastor Sal is sharing down in Carbondale this morning. And if you have not seen Carbondale Church, you have not been down there, it is really encouraging to see how God is moving. The campus has been open for 4 months or so here now. And I think it was 2 weeks ago, we had 18 baptisms there. So God is really moving there. Praise God. So anyway, I want to share some things here with you this morning. We finished up our study on the story last week, and last week was Mother's Day. We talked about the 7 churches in Revelation. And for those of you that were in life groups throughout the week, you guys spent a couple weeks going through Revelation and digging a little bit deeper into that. For those of you that got the book, The Story, I would encourage you to go back to the beginning and continue to read through and to see some of the things that God may be speaking to you. But we are going to be starting a new series here today, and I want to encourage you as we dive in this morning for you to be willing to wrestle with God. How many of you have wrestled with God before? How many of you have maybe wrestled with some questions where you just did not understand or you did not know the answer to that question, and you kind of went back and forth with yourself on how do I answer this, or you went back and forth with God and said, God, I don't understand. And I guess in my own life, I would say that there's probably those questions that I've had that may never get answered. And I understand that at this point, that there's some questions that I might ask God why, and know that I may never get the answer for that. And I know a lot of us have said, well, one day when we get to heaven, we'll get the answer. Anybody ever say that? We probably won't care about the answers when we get to heaven. Those things won't be important anymore, so it won't matter. But I want to ask you to wrestle with God this morning. I want you to be open to hear what God is saying to you, because how many of us intentionally took some time to talk with God this week and really listen to what he had to say to you? How many of us took some time, a time of, let's say, equal amount? It's 9:22, if that's right. We should be out of here by 10:30. I'm just kidding. You can leave now if you'd like. But how many of you took 40 minutes, 30 minutes, 35 minutes to say, you know what, God, what do you want to say to me this week? So I want to ask you to wrestle with God this morning. I'm going to ask you a series of questions before we get into the message here today. And I just want you to think about it. Because at times, we don't have an honest evaluation of where we really stand with God, because we are so busy at times that we don't actually give God the opportunity to speak into our lives. And we also may not, because of pride or other things, give other people the opportunity to speak into our lives. And so I want you to bear with me this morning as we go through some of these questions. And I want you to really think, okay, God, how am I doing in this area? What does this look like? And how can I practically live this out? So, do you struggle to forgive yourself? And I want you to go through these in your head briefly. And if one of them really stands out to you, maybe make a note and say, you know what, I'm going to go through this with God on my own time today or this week. And say, okay, God, what are you really saying to me? So do you struggle to forgive yourself? Are there things that maybe are in your life that you say, you know what, I haven't been able to move past that? Or maybe some things that you did in the past where you say, I still can't forgive myself because I did that. How do you react when others let you down? How do you respond to people when they let you down? Are you able to forgive them? Do you withdraw from them? Are you able to forgive them? Do you believe in limits to forgiveness? That something is too big or something is too bad for you to be able to forgive? Is there something that somebody's done to you that you said, you know what, that's so bad, I can't ever forgive them for that? Or have you ever done something where you said, you know what, that's so bad that there's no way that God can forgive me for that? There's no way that I could ever be in right standing or relationship with God because I did this. Do you live with guilt and shame? Is there this constant level of guilt and shame in you because of the way that maybe you're living now or maybe the way that you have lived in the past? Is it easier for you to hold a grudge? Or is it easier for you to forgive someone? Are you still holding on to past hurts from people? Or are you able to let those things go and move on? Is it easier to get angry at people when they do something you don't like and hold on to that? Or is it easier for you to let go of those things and forgive them? Do you ever believe that your sin is not as bad as someone else's sin? Have you ever looked at someone else's life and said, you know what? I may not be perfect, but that person, they really don't have it together. That their sin is worse than my sin. Do you believe that your sin is not as bad as someone else's sin? Who's the worst sinner that you know? Don't look at the person sitting next to you. Who is the worst sinner that you know? And for some of us, it may be us, because we know all of our sin, and we know all of our secrets. Are you resting in God because you are accepted by Him? Or are you performing to be accepted by Him? Are you resting in God because you know God already accepts you for who you are? Or are you trying to live your life in such a way that if you perform and do the right things, then God will accept you? And then if that's the case, then what things do you have to do each day or each week or each month in order for God to accept you? What are the right things that you have to do to be accepted by God? And then what do you do to make yourself feel like you are okay with God? What do you do that's going to make you feel like you're in right standing with God? Is there anything that you can do to make you feel like you're in right standing with God? And if I'm honest in my own journey of some of these things, and for those of you who maybe have gotten up and communicated in front of people, there's this vulnerability that comes when you prepare something to speak to people, and then you realize as you're preparing all the areas where you're insufficient in the things that you're going to talk about. So as we talk this morning, I've wrestled with these questions. And at times in my own journey of faith, the performing to be accepted by Him is probably one of the bigger areas that I've struggled with. Because how many of us were brought up in such a way where you had to make sure that your life looked a certain way in order for you to be accepted by God or people? Anybody else besides me? Your life had to look a certain way. You had to make sure that you did the right things. And in your mind, if you didn't do the right things, you were not accepted by God and you weren't in right standing with Him. But if you did the right things, then you were okay with God. And that's a dangerous place to be, because if we feel like we have to perform to meet God's standards, then we're always going to continue to fall short of God's standard, because realistically, none of us can perform that well. None of us can perform to the point where you are in right standing with God. And so the series that we're starting today and for the next few weeks is Grace Blockers. Self-sabotaging your own faith journey. And at times, many of us have sabotaged our relationship with God because we didn't take the perspective of grace in our walk with Him, but we took the perspective of, I have to make sure that I do the right things or look the right way or act the right way, and then I will be in right standing with God. And yes, as you go through the Bible and you go through the Old Testament and you look at the commandments, there were all these things that you had to do to live up to a relationship with God. And if you didn't, then you made a sacrifice in the Old Testament, right? If your life wasn't clean and if you did the wrong thing, then you would go and make a sacrifice in order to be right. Or maybe depending on the church you grew up in, you went to confession. And after you confessed, then it was okay. And then you were in right standing with God. And at what point does my performance dictate my relationship with God? And if my performance is what controls my relationship with God, well, then there's this level of pride because I feel like my relationship with God then only depends on me. And so am I able to make myself in right standing with God? Or is that dependent on somebody else? So define karma for me this morning. You don't have to say it out loud, but define karma in your head this morning. What is karma? Karma, for a lot of us, would think that whatever you do will be done back to you, right? If you do bad things, then bad things come back to you. If you do right things, then right things or good things will come back to you. So, and a lot of us at times, we operate on karma, right? If somebody does something bad, then they deserve something bad. Right? If somebody does something good, then they deserve something good. And how many of us have felt that in our own lives? Like, oh, if somebody does something bad to me, then I need to make sure that they receive the punishment for what they did. And if somebody does something good for me, then I need to make sure that I pay them back. So define grace. As we look at what grace is in the Bible, define what grace looks like for you. Because it would almost seem that grace and karma are two different things. Now, there's a biblical principle of sowing and reaping, right? If you sow these things, you'll reap these things. But grace is something completely different than karma, where just because you do bad things does not mean that you will get bad things. That it's possible that you get things that you don't deserve, and it's not based on your performance. So in Matthew chapter 5, verse 3, Jesus says, "Blessed are those who recognize that they are spiritually helpless. The kingdom of heaven belongs to them." Maybe you've heard the version where it says those who are poor in spirit would be the same as those who are spiritually helpless. If we could be those people this morning that realize that we are spiritually helpless. Each one of us is helpless this morning. And the moment that we get to a place where we feel like we have all the answers, then we're not in a good place mentally. And we're not in a good place with God, because each one of us is spiritually helpless this morning. There is nothing that you could do that would put you in right standing with God this morning. The only thing that you could do is surrender your life to Jesus Christ. So you are spiritually helpless this morning. What if I told you that it's not those who have all the answers, but it's those who realize that they are helpless without the power of God? It's not the people that you see that you would say are religious people. And let me tell you this, I think part of the reason I'm able to do what I do on Sundays is because I don't have a lot of confidence in my ability to do what I would do. I can guarantee you I do not have all the answers, and neither does anyone in this room. But when we get to a place in our lives, and I think for some of us that have been Christians for a long time, we get to the place where we think it's possible that we already know and that we already have all the answers. One time I had an older person that I know say to me, "Well, I don't have to go to church anymore because I already did that. I already know. I already went to church. I already did that enough times." Okay, well, at what point do you have all the answers in order for you to live in right relationship with God? So it's not those who have all the answers, but it's those who realize that they're helpless without God. And it's every day. I think the more and more that you know Jesus Christ, you realize the more humility that you need in order to live for him. Because realistically, each one of us needs grace every single day in order to live for him. And grace isn't just so that we can have salvation, but grace is so that we have the power to be able to live for God every single day. Because we each fall short every single day, and we do not measure up to God's standard. Ephesians 2 says, "Because of his great love for us, God, who is rich in mercy, made us alive with Christ when we were dead in transgressions. It is by grace that you have been saved." And so the only way that I can have a relationship with God is because of Jesus Christ. It's because He was rich in mercy that he sent Jesus Christ to die, that while we were still in our transgressions. God did not wait for you to have your life together. How many of us waited to go to church or to come to God until we felt like we had everything together? Like we had all our things in place so that now I'm cleaned up enough to come to God. That I'm no longer swearing and I'm not drinking anymore and I'm not in a relationship and I'm not married or whatever. The reality is that Jesus went to the people on the streets and it didn't matter if they were church people. It didn't matter if their life was together. It didn't matter if they fell short that morning, but Jesus Christ met them where they were at. He physically went to them. And if you think you have to have your life cleaned up in order for Jesus to meet you where you're at, then you've missed it. Because Jesus Christ is willing to go to you in the depths of your sin, in your darkness, in your pain, and the things that you don't want to talk about or admit to anybody else, and his grace will meet you in that place. Each one of us is in need of God's grace. Every single day. None of us are able to live up to the standard of God. And at times, we allow our pride to kick in because maybe some of us are cleaned up church people. Right? Maybe some of us have cleaned up our lives really good so we can look like we're able to set an example of what a Christian really looks like and what does a Christian really look like. Because I can tell you from 17 years ago when I met Jesus, I cleaned up my life pretty good. Honestly, I did. I cleaned up my life pretty good. I was no longer with people I wasn't married to. I don't smoke anymore. I don't drink anymore. You probably won't hear me swear. I mean, you might at times, but you probably won't. I've done a pretty good job of cleaning my life up to look the part. But does that mean that I'm beyond God's grace at this point in my life? Does that mean because maybe some of you haven't cleaned your life up to that point that you aren't in need of God's grace just as much as I am? But it's every single day, God, I still need you. And some of us, if we're not careful, we get into this point where we've worked harder, right? I've done more, right? I've worked harder for God, or I've done more, so I'm in better standing than you. Or I obey better, I listen to God's voice better, or I follow his rules and regulations better. I'm not as bad as you, right? You're worse than me. Because I look at your sin and I think, man, their sin is so bad. And really, the only reason you say their sin is bad is because you think, well, that's not the same sin that I have. And you're okay with your sin. But you look at somebody else's sin as bad because you don't do the same sin as them. Yes or no? All of us have sin at times, and it's because we need God's grace. I'm not as bad as you. I'm superior because I already know. Because I already learned that lesson. Because I'm already past that point in my life where maybe you're stuck right now. And it all goes back to his grace. I'll never be good enough. And I can't be forgiven. All of these things stem from pride in our own lives. And the moment that we allow pride to come into our walk with Jesus is the moment that we step outside of God's grace. The moment that I think that I'm better than someone, or that my life is cleaner, or that my Christianity is better, or that I understand more or know more, or I'll never be good enough and I can't be forgiven. Just another form of pride. It's just another form of pride because at that point I think that my right standing with God is based on my ability to perform. Because if I can't ever be good enough, then it depends on me to have my relationship with God. And it's not dependent on me. I can be forgiven for anything. And I probably will never be good enough, but it's only through Jesus Christ and his grace that I'm able to have a relationship with him. And so there's questions that you're going to ask that you have to wrestle with. There's things that you're going to ask, you have to wrestle with and say, God, is there areas of my life where maybe I've allowed pride to come into my life? That there's areas of my religion or my understanding or my church life or my Christianity that I've allowed to dictate how I live for you. And if I don't understand grace, and this is the biggest thing, if I don't understand God's grace in my own life, how can I show God's grace to someone else? And how many of us at some point in time have met a Christian or been involved in ministry and someone didn't show us grace? And what did that show to us? How did we feel? And so if you're like me, at times I struggle with the ability to show grace. Is anybody in here married? Does anybody in here have kids? Have you ever struggled with the ability to show grace to your spouse or to your kids? And if I struggle with the ability to show grace, then I probably don't understand God's grace to the point where I need to understand God's grace. And it's every time I go back, because when you look like you have your life cleaned up, you have a tendency to think that everything is good and you have it all together. Those that are spiritually helpless, those are the ones that really have the answer. The ones that are able to realize that they don't have everything together. So, what is grace? What is grace? Grace is God's unconditional love and unearned kindness, freely given to humans because of his character rather than human value or achievement. It doesn't matter how many good things you do. Doesn't matter what your church attendance is, how many prayers you prayed. There's nothing that you can do to take your sin and make it right. There's nothing that you can do to take your life separated from God and connect yourself to God. It's God's unconditional love and his unearned kindness, right? His unmerited favor, freely given to us because of God, not because of us, not because of anything that I can do. The concept of grace is getting something that you don't deserve. Not karma, but grace. Even though I did something wrong, I'm getting something that I don't deserve. And giving someone something that they don't deserve. Giving someone something that they don't deserve. That's the concept of grace. Getting something you don't deserve and being able to give someone something that they don't deserve. How many of us actually deserve God's grace? Right? I deserve that God would forgive me even though I've fallen short, and I can have a place with him in heaven. For the grace of God has been revealed, bringing salvation to all people. The grace of God has been revealed to us, bringing salvation to all of us. The only way that we can have salvation with God is because of his grace. There's nothing that I can do or say that will put me in right standing with God, because it's only through his grace that I can be in right standing with him. And if we're honest, how many of us have tried to perform our way into right standing with God? How many of us have tried to do all the right things to make sure we're in right standing with God? And it's not that we shouldn't do the right things, because as we move on in this series, we'll see that grace isn't only the power for salvation, right? But grace gives us the power to be able to live for God and do the right things, right? And so many of us, we're stuck in these cycles of sin and suffering and pain and loss and emptiness and separation and pride and self-righteousness, and each one of us struggles with different things on this screen, different areas, or maybe all of these areas. And God's grace was revealed to us to pierce through these things. God's grace was revealed to us through the person of Jesus Christ. Grace is not a concept or a biblical principle that we'll pick up and we'll read and we'll say, you know what, I understand grace. How many of us in this room could truly say that we understand God's grace? How many of us could willingly sin against God, knowing that God's Spirit said, do not do this, and I willingly did it anyway, and then say, you know what? Even though I fell short, I believe that God can forgive me. How many of us can understand that? Because how many times have someone fell short of our standard and we were not willing to show them grace? Yes or no? Right? How many times have my kids fallen short of what I think they should perform to, and yet instead of showing them grace, I rebuke them or I discipline them? How many times have my wife not lived up to my expectation, and instead of showing her grace, I came down on her and said, you didn't do what I thought you were supposed to do? Grace isn't a principle or a concept that we're going to understand this morning because I shared about it from the pulpit. It's something that you're going to continue to grow in as you continue to walk for God, because you realize every day that you rely on his grace just to be able to live for him. In your life apart from God's grace, you will continually fall short and you'll get stuck in the trap of all of these things. Because the Bible tells us that the law was given to us for us to be able to follow God's rules and his regulations, and that the law was not able to be lived up to, so God sent his son, Jesus Christ, so that we can have a relationship with him. And when God's grace is given, it cuts through the emptiness of life and the suffering and the pain and the loss, and we're able to receive God's grace despite all the brokenness that's inside of us. In Titus 2, it says that God's grace is revealed through Jesus Christ. And it says that we are instructed to turn from godless living and from sinful pleasures, to repent. That we should live in this evil world with wisdom and devotion to God. Wisdom, righteousness, and devotion to God. So grace doesn't only come to give us salvation. Grace wasn't only given so that I could be in right standing with God, but grace is what gives me the ability to live with wisdom, with righteousness, and devotion to God. Grace is what gives me the ability to look at my life and the areas where I've fallen short and be able to say to God, God, thank you for forgiveness. God, thank you for the power to live for you. And it's not going back to God and begging him for forgiveness. How many of us have felt we've sinned so bad that we could not come back to God? Honestly. How many of us refused to come to church because it felt like we weren't able to come? God, I'm not worthy to come to church. I shouldn't be able to come and worship you. How many of us neglected to read our Bible because we felt that we were so far separated from God that I shouldn't even be able to read his word? Or I shouldn't even be able to address him in prayer? Honestly. God, I've messed up so bad. How could I come back to you? And that's where grace comes in. Because it gives us the ability to go to God and not beg him for forgiveness. Not beg him for forgiveness, but go and receive forgiveness. Because the Bible tells us that while we were yet sinners, just like we read in Ephesians 2. Ephesians 2. God saved you by his grace when you believed, and you can't take credit for this. It is a gift from God. Salvation is not a reward for the good things that we have done, so none of us can boast about it. In the moments when you fell short, God's grace was already there. Before you knew God, forgiveness was already provided for you. While we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. Before you cleaned your life up to the point where you felt you were in right standing with God, God had already met you where you were. That you had the ability to go to him to ask for forgiveness. And it's not, God, please forgive me. I've messed up so bad. God, please forgive me. It's, God, I accept your forgiveness. Because I know that your forgiveness has already been provided for me through Jesus Christ. So, grace gives us the ability to live in this evil world with wisdom and righteousness and devotion to God. It transforms the motivation of how you live. It's not just salvation, but it's the motivation of how I live. God's grace gives me the ability to live for him. God showed his great love for us by sending Christ to die for us while we were still sinners. When your life wasn't cleaned up, and your life will never be cleaned up, God sent his son for you. And when grace is given to us and we're able to receive it, and my question for you this morning would be, are you able to receive God's grace today? Do you feel like you're at a place where you know that you've missed the mark at times, but you still feel that God has forgiven you for your failures? You feel like, okay, I know that I missed the mark, and I'll probably miss it again at some point in my life, but I know somehow that I'm still in right standing with God. And I guess the next question would be, do you believe that you're in right standing with God? That if you had to go stand before God the Father today, if you left this earth today and you stood before him, do you feel like you would be in right standing with him where you would be able to enter into heaven? can I receive God's grace today? And if I receive God's grace, then there's this level of gratitude that comes into my life where the holiness that's in my life, where the area of my life where I can say, look, I cleaned up my life, would not be out of obligation, but it would be out of gratitude for the fact that God cared enough about me to bring me into relationship with him, and that is my way to live for him. If I receive God's grace this morning, then there's this level of gratitude, knowing that God has provided salvation, and my holiness is an act of response to God's grace. While we look forward with hope to the wonderful day when the glory of our great God and Savior, Jesus Christ, will be revealed for a second time. He gave his life to free us from every kind of sin, to cleanse us, and to make us his very own people, totally committed to doing good deeds. Grace that was given to you was for salvation, but for the power for you to be able to live successfully for God. To be able to overcome your shortcomings and your failures in the areas where you haven't yet surrendered to God. God's grace gives you power, because in the moment that you try to do something outside of God and you say, look at me, look how good I did. Look, God, I was able to do the thing that your word says. What happens in the moment when you fall short? What happens in the moments when you lose it and your anger gets the best of you, or you don't show grace to someone else, or you don't live up to the standard that God has for you, and then you go back and you get stuck in this cycle of, okay, God, I'm not able to live up to that. God, I'm not able to live for you. God, how could I possibly serve you and be in relationship with you if I continue to fail again and again and again? But God, I receive your forgiveness. And God, I know that as your grace is on my life, that I'm able to successfully live for you, because every time I mess up, I don't beat myself up. You must teach these things and encourage the believers to do them. You have the authority to correct them when necessary, so don't let anyone disregard what you say. Paul writes this letter to Titus, and he says, I want you to teach these things to the church. He says, you have the authority to correct them when necessary, so don't let anyone disregard what you say. How many of us have given someone the ability to speak into our lives to correct us and to maybe show us the areas where we miss? Because the thing about grace and wrestling with these questions is that most of us probably miss these things in these areas of our lives because we've convinced ourselves that we don't need to examine ourselves. So how many of us have someone in our life that is able to speak into our lives and tell us the truth? Somebody that would be able to come to us and say, hey, there's something in your life that doesn't look right, that doesn't represent Christ well. And I know in my own life, I've had people sit me down and say, maybe your heart leans towards grace, but maybe your words don't. Maybe your heart's in the right place, but maybe the way that you portray yourself doesn't come across that way. Maybe you understand grace a little bit in your life, but why aren't you showing grace to other people? So are you willing to wrestle with God? Are you willing to take some time to wrestle with God, to ask the questions and say, God, do I understand your grace? Do I really understand what forgiveness looks like? Do I really understand your grace, or do I live by the merit system? That God, if I do enough of the right things, then I can be in right standing with you. If I pray enough of the right prayers, if I come to church on the right days, if I put enough money in the offering, if I spend enough time with you, then at some point I'm right. How many of us can honestly say I'm in right standing with God this morning? And if I'm not in right standing with God, what sin or failure or shortcoming or habit comes to my mind that I've allowed to disqualify me from being in right standing with God? What thing is in my life that I've allowed myself to be convinced that this thing, this sin, this habit, this failure, this past, this brokenness has disqualified me from being in right standing with God? And honestly, some of us are so proud and we don't realize it's pride that we'll never get to the place of right standing with God because we've convinced ourselves that we're so bad, that we're so broken, that how could God ever accept us the way that we are? How could God accept me the way that I am? Someone that is spiritually helpless and doesn't have all the right answers and still falls short. Have you allowed your sin and the things in your life to disqualify you from right standing with God? So God, am I in right standing with you this morning? Are there things in my life that I've allowed to remove me from a relationship with you? And if I've justified those things in removing me, then I don't understand your grace for me to be able to come to you and receive forgiveness just the way that I am. I don't understand God's character. So over the next few weeks, we're going to dig into some of these grace blockers because it would be impossible for me to address all of them today. And if you feel that there was an area of your life where you say, you know what, it's possible I haven't received God's grace in that area. Or maybe there's a sin that's been highlighted that I thought about. Or maybe something from my past came up and I still don't feel that I've been forgiven. Or maybe there's an ongoing habit in my life or a sin issue in my life that I feel disqualifies me from a relationship with God. So what is a grace blocker? Grace blockers are unidentified, unaddressed issues that keep us stuck and limits our ability to experience the growth-inducing grace of God. And that's why I mentioned possibly having someone in your life who's willing to speak up to you and tell you the truth, because at times those areas are unidentified because we don't see them. We don't realize. So they're unidentified, unaddressed issues that keep us stuck and limits our ability to experience the growth-inducing grace of God. And if we're stuck and we don't understand God's grace, then we will never successfully live for Him in a way that honors Him and brings glory to Him and builds His kingdom. So what are some common grace blockers? And maybe some of you can relate to these. I'm going to ask our worship team if they would come up. Common grace blockers: bitterness, guilt, shame, addiction, fear, control, unforgiveness, ignorance, arrogance, self-righteousness, and unteachable spirit. And as you look over this list, you may be able to relate to some of these things. What prevents you from receiving grace, and what prevents you from giving grace? What in your life has prevented you from receiving God's grace in certain areas? And then what prevents you from being able to give that grace? Because I know in my own life, I've struggled to understand what God's grace really is. Because in my mind, a merit system of saying, if you do these things, then you will be right with God. Because in humanity, we think if someone falls short of our standard, then they deserve what comes to them because they fell short. Yes or no? In our human thinking, that makes sense. That there has to be this merit system where if we do this good thing, then this good thing will come back. And if I do this bad thing, then this bad thing will come back and I deserve punishment. But when you look at God's grace, it's the complete opposite. Is that you don't deserve any of it, but yet God freely gave it to you. You will continue to fall short, but yet God freely gives grace to you. What's preventing me from receiving God's grace into my life today? And what's preventing me from being able to show that same grace to other people? So the question that I would leave you with is, are you willing to wrestle with God? Are you willing to wrestle with your understanding of what it looks like to experience His grace? And if it came down to it today and you stood before God, do you believe that you're in right standing with Him? Have you done enough good things to be right with God? Have you came to church enough? Did you put enough money in the offering? Did you pray enough prayers? Did you read enough chapters in the Bible in order for you to be right with him? Because if you did, then you don't understand it. But those that are spiritually helpless, they come to God and they say, God, I don't have it all figured out. God, I don't have all the answers. God, I don't know how I can be in right standing with you except for through a relationship with Jesus Christ. And when I come to the end of myself is where I find God. Because in the moments when you don't know and you don't understand and you don't know how you can continually fall away from God in certain areas, or you can't surrender those areas to God, it's those moments when we're helpless where we really understand God's grace. Because I can tell you this, when everything's good and you got it all figured out, those are the moments where your pride sets in and says, you know what, I think I got this. I think I can do this Christian thing. I think I can live this church life and do all the right things and get to church on time and live for God. And the moment we get there, we're just 1 second away from falling outside and realizing that, you know what? I can't do it. I can't live up to that standard. But Jesus Christ came so that I didn't have to, so that I could receive that grace. Father God, thank you. And God, even in my own life, I don't understand your grace or fathom the depths of it. Because in my human thinking, I think, God, how can I fall short of your standard and yet still be in right standing with you? And so, God, this morning, each one of us, God, we evaluate where we're at. I say, God, do I really understand? Do I have some preconceived idea of what it looks like to experience your grace? God, what is the right things that I have to do to be in right standing with you? And so, God, this morning I ask that you would help us to come to the end of ourselves and to wrestle with some of those questions. God, am I able to forgive people? God, am I holding on to bitterness or resentment? God, am I so hard on myself every time I fall short? God, do I feel like I have to do the right things or work real hard to be able to be in right standing with you? And God, I ask that you would help us to break down those barriers, God, of human thinking, and help us to become spiritually helpless. God, that we would realize that it's in the moments when we don't know and we don't understand is where we find you, is where we find grace to continue to move on. So God, help us to wrestle this week. God, help us to be people that understand grace and that are willing to show grace to others. And we thank you that you sent Jesus Christ, that in the moments when we didn't understand and we didn't know, God, and we were far from you, that you were still caring about us enough to send your Son. That while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. Thank you for right standing with you based solely on our relationship with Jesus Christ. In his name we pray. Amen. Would you stand with us? We're going to close with a song. After the song, I'm going to come back up and I'm going to give you an opportunity if you need prayer for anything today. If you want to talk about God's grace or maybe some of the areas that you feel you need to talk about this morning, I'd love to talk with you. I'd love to pray with you. But let's worship this morning.
We love you, and we'll never stop. Can't live without you, Jesus. We love you. We can't get enough. All of this is for you, Jesus. When you walk into the room, sickness starts to vanish. Every hopeless situation ceases to exist. And when you walk into the room, the dead begin to rise, 'cause there is resurrection life in all you do. We love you and we'll never stop. Can't live without you, Jesus. We love you. We can't get enough. All of this is for you, Jesus. Come and consume, God, all we are. Give you permission, our hearts are yours. We want you. We want you. Come and consume, God, all we are. Give you permission, our hearts are yours. We want you. We want you. Come and consume, God, all we are. Give you permission, our hearts are yours. We want you. We want you. Come and consume, God, all we are. Give you permission, our hearts are yours. We want you. We want you. We love you and we'll never stop. Can't live without you, Jesus. We love you. We can't get enough. All of this is for you, Jesus.
If you're here this morning and you need prayer, if you say, you know what, maybe I don't fully understand God's grace, but maybe today's the day that I need to surrender my life to Him. I'd love to pray with you about that. I'd love to talk with you about that. If you're here and you say, I need prayer for anything at all, something that could be going on in your life, I'd love to pray with you. My wife will be here. She'd love to pray with the ladies that are here. We want to thank you for coming today. If you're new, please stop in the guest reception room back there. We'd love to meet you and give you a gift. Thank you guys for coming today. God bless you and have a great Sunday.